If you're anything like me, you refuse to be held back not by time, not by expectations, and not by needlessly throwing money away into the pockets of big wireless. Thankfully, there's a better way with Consumer Cellular. Consumer Cellular offers the same fast, reliable, nationwide coverage as big wireless without the big wireless cost. And they don't surprise you with hidden fees or confusing long-term contracts. For a limited time, you can sign up for Consumer Cellular and save $50 with promo code TED50.
Visit consumercellular.com/TED50 or call 1-888-FREEDOM and mention promo code TED50.
Terms and conditions apply.
You look great.
I feel good.
You're handsome.
I'm handsome.
What's your secret? I have pickled tits and a jelly belly.
If you make it to 75, people just treat you with so much respect. I think they're afraid you may crack and break or something. But I've reached the Mr. Danson stage.
Okay, so no Ozempic.
No.
Should we start it? So we start doing it?
Yeah. What is Ozempic? Now,
you take it and it stops the cravings, right?
Oh, it's not for the brain.
It's for the belly.
Or the belly.
It's for the belly. But you're a tall guy, so
no one has ever paid me to take my clothes off. You make a fortune taking your clothes off.
I wouldn't say a fortune, first of all.
A fortune.
I make $300 a week. And second of all, I will pay you $5 right now to get completely nude.
Well, guess what? They paid me $15 to never get nude.
Okay, well,
in front of them.
That's a dollar amount I can't match.
You haven't done that thing where you look at your skin and you go, what the fuck happened? And it happens in about 3 or 4 years very quickly where it's just very sad. Very sad.
No.
Yeah. Why am I doing this to myself?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You're beating yourself up.
Let me take this back and say, because I watched at 8 o'clock, I got up and watched Bad Trip. I apologize for missing it when it first came out.
No, it's okay. I'm surprised.
But it is fucking brilliant.
I'm surprised I'm here and you watched anything that I've ever done.
It is brilliant.
Thank you.
It's truly brilliant.
I appreciate it.
And I've never laughed harder, but what was amazing was how sweet and kind. I don't think you could do what you do if you weren't a sweet, kind, generous, big-hearted person. I really don't. Because if you were an asshole and you do scary things to people or put people in jeopardy, it would not work.
Yeah.
And at the end, watching everybody who you did prank during the, whatever you call it, during the credit
scroll,
they were so loving and kind and thrilled
and relieved.
Somebody told you, I read in an interview, but it's true. I fell in love with America watching that movie.
Yeah.
It was like
shows the humanity.
So much, humanity in everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the win of the thing. Because it's easy to make a prank movie cynical and feel mean-spirited and kind of give you an icky feeling. So it was hard to make it feel
Did you know that right off the bat when you started pranking people that you had to do it a certain way? Or
not really, because on my show I can prank people and just be a nightmare terrorist maniac, and it's a short show. But when you're in a movie is a different medium than a television show. Television show is only 22 minutes long. Comedy and a feature is at least 90 minutes long. So when you're with protagonist for that much time, you have to like them.
Yep.
You have to like them for a TV show as well. But you really they have to be human. You have to empathize and sympathize with them, and you have to like them, and you have to just hang out with them longer. So if you're hanging out with them longer, my show on Adult Swim is only 11 minutes. So I just get to be completely schizophrenic, absurdist maniac. Because 11 minutes, you don't have to invest in a character. For 90 minutes, you have to save the cat. You have to like the protagonist and hang out with them for at least 90 minutes. So because of that, we realized early on that the pranks, all my destruction and destructive behavior had to be accidental, a la Chris Farley. He was a big influence. So once we realized that I had to be this lovable boob who just means well, and his heart is in the right place, but he's just like a very accident prone and idiotic in a lovable way. that kind of informed how to write the pranks. So a lot of the pranks were, we call them help me pranks. They're pranks where the actor is in peril so that the marks, the people we're pranking, kind of get on the hook and get invested in whatever the scenario is. So
how written is it? I mean, obviously you have...
The story was very written. You know, it's a narrative. It's a narrative told through pranks. So we had like a very structured narrative that we wanted to nail. But once you're within the prank and you're interacting with the person, you're improvising and you're letting it go wherever.
But you have written it enough so you have planned for as many possible contingencies.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like Curb, you know. Curb is improvised, right? Yeah. But there's like...
But they've worked for 3 months on the structure.
On the structure, yeah. So it's probably the most like... That movie was probably the most like Curb out of anything.
Did you love it? Are you proud of that?
I'm very proud of it.
Oh,
it took me 7.5 years to make. It took me almost a decade to make. And I made no money, so... all I have is pride.
our whole family went nuts for it. My wife today,
I'm flattered by that.
Yeah, Mary's son Charlie is like a fanatic fan of yours. Yeah,
amazing.
It's really cool.
Amazing.
I am terrified of pranks. I'm, you know.
Well, wait till the end of this podcast, brother. Don't look under your seat.
Did he have time alone in this room before I got here?
No, I wouldn't.
But I'm off the clock. I came from so many shoulds and shouldn'ts. You know, it was like a gentleman never made, you know, it was rude, intentionally, unintentionally.
This is from your parents?
Parents and grandfather, very English. I do have a fear of, I don't want people to be suffering in any way if I'm pranking them and they don't know. So,
well, I'm a sociopath, so that
no, but you're not, because you don't take it out on them. You make yourself the butt
of the joke. Yeah. Because if you don't, you just become unlikable quick.
But what's really cool and makes it almost, it's so dangerous. To watch. That it's riveting. Besides funny, you do see the danger. You do believe
it's quite stressful.
The guy's coming at you with a knife. And it ups the level of, so when you laugh, I think you laugh even harder out of the relief that, you know, your hero didn't get stabbed. Did you ever get beat up?
I've gotten manhandled. And roughed up. I pranked Alex Jones at the Republican National Convention at this Bikers for Trump rally amongst the mosh pit of like alt-right.
I haven't seen that. How did that go?
That was a little bit sketchy. It was a little bit tough.
What was the conceit of the prank?
Alex Jones, this wasn't hidden camera. This was overt. Alex Jones was giving some speech outside at this rally. It was like a Bikers for Trump rally, and there was a lot of alt-right, kind of Proud Boy type guys there. And in the middle of his speech, I jumped up on stage and I asked him to fuck my wife for no reason. I was just like, hey, I'm not. And he goes, I get it. You're from The Daily Show. And I go, I'm not from The Daily Show. I just, here's my hotel key. It's my kink. I want you to fuck my wife. And I just made everything I said after that was completely apolitical. I said nothing political at all. And I think it maybe hits harder when you watch it. But then I jumped off stage and kind of got
bodyguards were coming after you, or no?
We had one bodyguard, but he was kind of deep in the background. I don't think he was paying attention. I didn't think it would get that heated so quickly. But you should really watch it. I don't think I'm doing it service.
Sorry, I will.
Well, I mean, I'm not giving you a homework assignment, but I mean, it's more effective if you watch it. But that was a little bit sketchy because it was an open carry state, so all those guys are like armed to the T. So, you know.
So you didn't grow up in Indiana?
I grew up in Florida, Boca Raton, Florida.
Woof.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah.
And I read that you and your dad and your sister were like the only African-American people of color in your neighborhood?
It wasn't the most diverse place in the world to grow up. I don't think we were the only ones, but we were in a cul-de-sac.
And your mom was she
My mom's
there?
a Jew from New York.
And not down in Florida with you? Did you?
No, yeah, she was. They were. My dad was from Haiti. They met in New York. My mom's from Manhattan. They got married in the 70s. They moved to Miami in the 80s. Then they moved up to Boca Raton. And they were together. They got divorced when I was like 12. But they were always there. My mom's still down there.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was your pre-teenage years like? Were you, I mean, I was Arizona, jumping on horses and doing that kind of thing.
I wasn't jumping on horses. I was very, I was always a class clown. I was very nerdy and academic. But then I realized when I could act out and misbehave, when I could get laughs from misbehaving, then it was all over. Then I was very hyperactive. I was very, believe it or not, I was very ADD.
Right.
And hyperactive. And I just constantly got in trouble. I got straight A's in school, but I would always get in trouble. I would always
that must
get
have
suspended.
Been confusing for them.
I would always have like parent-teacher conferences because I was constantly getting in trouble. And they would drag my parents in and all the teachers would be like, "Oh, his grades are fine. His grades are fine. He won't shut the fuck up." And I was bad. I was really bad. I got suspended for mooning my friends. I got suspended for going to school barefoot. I one time, the glass enclosure where the fire hose is,
right,
that the fireman has to access in case of an emergency. One time I like purposely bashed my head through it to like make my friend laugh. And the glass is made to break. So the glass broke. I leaned back. All this glass sliced my head and my hands open. I was bleeding out of my head and my hands. And I didn't want to like blow the joke, so I just turned to my friend and I went, "Stigmata, I'm the second coming of Jesus." I bled all the way to the other building, and they made me go to the hospital. But I was bad. I was poorly behaved.
When did you first have like an outlet other than amusing your friends and stuff for that energy?
I was always playing music, and I was always in shitty bands, and I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And
upright bass.
For upright bass. I went to jazz school. Yeah.
And how did that come about? I mean, why music? Why?
I was just obsessed with, I still am. I just was obsessed with music. So I knew I wanted to do something creative.
As a pre-teenager?
I was playing piano since I was 5.
Wow.
And I played tuba in band in middle school. And then I played cello and bass. And
I played cello for about 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, but I didn't have. I don't have.
Yo ma.
Yeah, I don't have music in me. I like memorized the notes, and I knew that meant this finger here. But I never had music running through my soul, kind of thing. So I kind of gave up. My parents bought me my first little guitar because I put the cello on my lap and tried to play it that way.
Well, how'd you pivot into acting?
Wanted to be a basketball player. That's my...
That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't answer my question.
Sure, I pivoted.
That doesn't make any sense. Are you even listening?
No,
Dad?
Actually, I'm not. Where am I? Just constant fear there's going to be a prank coming my way.
No, I want to do you like that.
I went from, cello was, I was just trying to identify with you as in music. Cello was nothing. That was
a blip.
That was a blip. Basketball was my passion.
And you went to college for basketball?
No, I thought that I went to a prep school in Connecticut and then played basketball. And we won our league champions.
Nice.
But as I said, like any high school of like 1,200 kids or something would have cleaned our clock. We were a very small school. Then I went
What year? This mid-60s?
66, yeah.
So, and were you part of a countercultural revolution? Were you smoking weed at halftime?
I missed the 60s completely.
How you were in the thick of it.
I smoked.
You weren't doing acid and shooting three-pointers?
No, and I went to Stanford. So I was in San Francisco land in the 60s and missed it completely.
How? How's it possible?
Just being
Were you
from
immersed
Arizona,
in it?
I don't know what. I didn't know. I was faking my way through school. I was so unacademic that I thought I'd have basketball, but that was the same year that Lou Alcindor, Kareem was a freshman at UCLA. And it was just like, oh, well, fuck, I'm not. This is not for me.
Yeah.
And I was very sad, disappointed. But then I found acting my sophomore year at Stanford, and then the light bulb went off, and life made sense. And I transferred to Carnegie Mellon, and then New York.
And continued to study acting.
Yeah.
Where did you graduate in New York?
Graduated from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, then went to New York to look for work.
But you started in theater?
Yeah.
How long, what was the gap between finishing school and Cheers? What were like those years? Were you doing plays or were you acting?
Doing plays, commercials, soap operas, anything.
Were you waiting tables in the background too?
No,
and grind?
I always managed to get a job.
Squeak by.
And back then in New York, you could get, if you worked on a commercial on Tuesday, you couldn't collect your unemployment for that day, but they let you collect it for the rest of the week.
Right.
So you could kind of scrape by.
And this is in the 70s in New York?
Yeah, went to New York 72, left in 78.
So it was a little less expensive than it is now.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
You could afford a place.
It was also a little crazier.
It was very dangerous.
Yeah.
Did you see some gnarly? My mom had to worry about Son of Sam in the 70s. She had to cut her hair short. Yeah, it was just a nightmare.
Where was Son of Sam? In what borough was that happening? Do you remember?
I don't know. She lived in Harlem, and then she moved to Queens. But she didn't move to Queens though. She had my sister. Huh?
I think it was Queens or some. It wasn't Manhattan. I remember.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But where'd you live in Manhattan?
West Side, Upper West Side. It was kind of bombed out back then.
Really?
Amsterdam and 90th. Yeah. But I was acting, so I didn't care. I was taking classes. I was auditioning. It didn't matter.
What a cool time to be doing that there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old are you?
40.
So New York, So you were what, 80s? You were coming of age kind of thing?
I was born in 83.
83.
Yeah.
90s.
I saw New York when I was 6 years old. I went to the top of the World Trade Center, and I saw when they had graffiti on the trains. I caught like the last sliver of like...
was Times Square, had that been gentrified yet?
It was dodgy, but I don't really have memories of that. I have the earliest memories of Times Square I have was kind of in the gentrification stage.
Right. Okay, so you get to Boston, you get to Berkeley, School of Music.
Yeah.
Are you still pranking your friends? Or
Yeah, I was still being a fucker. I was still being a nuisance. I was being a nuisance. I would like wear a tuxedo for no reason and skateboard around the hallways on the carpet and stuff like that.
And in your mind, just going for the laugh today, or are you
going
thinking...
for the laugh. I had nothing to do with... I didn't want anything to do with comedy professionally. I just thought it was too hard and intimidating, and I had anxiety.
Thought about it? Is that why you thought it was too hard? Or
for like a millisecond, I had great admiration for stand-up comics, but I was like, I could never do that. That seems like a nightmare. And then at the as I was finishing school, the music industry was kind of falling apart because Napster and peer-to-peer file sharing and stuff was fucking everything up. So like, the records of the 70s, the cassette tapes of the 80s, the CDs of the 90s were all irrelevant because they started to
like
the technology
today.
The technology was deteriorating, or being replaced. So and my friend Brian Moskin, he was just like, "You're so funny, you got to try." And Boston's a very comedy-rich town. There's comedy clubs everywhere. And my band, at the time, we would play these open mics, and all the venues I would play at these open mics would always have like an open mic comedy night. We'd play on a Monday, and they'd be like, "Come back Tuesday for the comedy night." So,
and then was that the first time you stood up?
That's when I started trying it. Yeah, that's when I started trying stand-up, and I fell in love with it instantly. And I loved it also out of convenience because I had to schlep my upright bass everywhere my whole college, all 4 years of college. And then when I started doing stand-up, I was like, I don't have to haul any equipment anywhere. I can just show up and there's a microphone already there. So it was out of like laziness and convenience, I started doing stand-up.
And would you write your material?
Oh, yeah.
And what was it, the same kind of attitude?
It was very loud and hyperactive and hyperbolic and psychedelic and absurdist. And it was like the beginning of like my figuring out my point of view.
And are you getting paid at this point or no?
In Boston, no, not a dime. Not a dime.
Right.
Not a dime for like the first decade of comedy.
And but you had a following. Did people...
And not in Boston. I only did my first year in Boston, then I moved to New York and I started doing stand-up, but I was like working day jobs and it really took like a decade of just crawling through the sewer before I made any money doing it or had any following.
Right.
Yeah. It was a decade of just the doldrums. I was like, oh shit, I'm not close enough to my microphone.
Actually, could you back off your mic just a bit?
But yeah, it was a decade of poverty.
And where? I'm sorry.
I only did 1 year in Boston, then I moved to New York for 5 years. Then I moved to LA. After I finally like got an agent and a manager.
Right. When did you go?
It was kind of working.
Little successes coming my way. When did you?
Little teeny. The very first thing I booked when I moved to Los Angeles was Curb Your Enthusiasm, and I got 2 lines. I said 2 lines to Larry. It was the episode where he thinks his ex-wife is cheating on him with Jason Alexander, Cheryl Hines. He thinks Cheryl is cheating on him with Jason Alexander. Right. It was the Seinfeld reunion.
Oh, wow.
So he gets paranoid. I don't totally remember the premise. He gets paranoid that they're having an affair, and I played a PA on the set of the Seinfeld reunion, and he's kind of asking me for. I had no laughs. I was just delivering exposition.
Right.
And he was just asking me, but I had 2 little lines, and I was like, "Oh yeah!" And it was like one of the first auditions I had when I moved here. So I was like, "I'm gonna fucking make it." And then after that, I didn't book shit for like years. I couldn't. I would fall apart in auditions. I was just so nervous. I would clam up. But that was one of the first gigs I booked, and then I would kind of scrape by on commercials and stuff like that.
Did you audition for scripted shows when you fell apart? Was that right?
I was auditioning. I was auditioning for whatever, anything and everything, and. I kind of, like, when I was in New York, I would scrape by on commercial work and some stand-up gigs, but I had various day jobs and I temped. And then I moved to LA, same thing, and I scraped by on little. Then I started really focusing on acting in a way that I hadn't in New York when I was just focusing on stand-up.
By doing what?
By taking classes and actually reading and rehearsing.
Who'd you study with?
I studied with Leslie Kahn and John Rosenfeld, and they whipped me into shape because I knew nothing. And then just educating myself, I read, that Joanna Merlin book, Auditioning. Is it Auditioning or Audition? I just had to like demystify the process for myself because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I read Uta Hagen's book.
Yeah.
I never read Stanislavski or Strasberg, but after reading Uta Hagen, it felt like I was like, I think I need to learn by doing more than continuing to read. Also, Stanislavski, I think that book is like 112 years old or something like that.
Easily.
So it might not be totally relevant.
But you know what you do so well, which not all stand-ups do, is you throw the ball back and forth. A lot of stand-ups will go, I got the ball.
Yeah.
And let me run with it.
Yeah.
Whereas you really are bouncing off of people and impacting them and allowing yourself to be impacted. And that's really cool.
Well, I also feel like that's where comedy lives. You got to like be in the moment and experiment, and it gives it an element of danger and suspense and surprise. You got to almost surprise yourself.
Why make life harder than it needs to be? With Consumer Cellular, you get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage as big wireless, but without the cost of big wireless. And switching is easy. And I'm talking to you, Nick, because pretty soon you're going to be switching because these commercials I'm reading are going to convince you to do it. I guarantee it.
I feel myself being convinced.
I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Consumer Cellular is here to serve you. with an award-winning team of real human people based entirely in the U.S. There are no activation fees, no hidden costs, and no long-term contracts. They even have partnerships with AARP, USAA, Assurion, and Allstate Roadside Assistance.
Ted, I know you made the switch recently to consumer cellular.
I did.
How's the service been since switching?
I can tell you I put it into a test because I live in a canyon, and service is, usually drops out like mad, and I haven't had any dropouts, so that's pretty cool.
That's a good stress test, being in a canyon.
Yeah.
Like literally canyon?
Literally.
You're at the bottom of this huge...
I'm not huge, but, big enough to... Are you trying to get me to tell you where I live?
Can you post the address on the screen? Let's get Ted's address up there.
For a limited time, you can sign up with Consumer Cellular and save $50 with promo code TED50.
Visit consumercellular.com/TED50 or call 1-888-FREEDOM and mention promo code TED50.
Terms and conditions apply. So your folks, when did your folks go, oh my God, you're a big old hit and this was working and we're so proud of you?
It took them time. Because my talk show is very bizarre. I think my mom got it. My mom's American, so she got it right away. My dad, it took him a while to figure out.
Is this all right for you to be doing?
Yeah,
kind of thing?
Yeah. Also, my dad he escaped a third world country, then put himself through med school and became a doctor. So he didn't want me to do it.
That takes some seriousness.
Yeah, he didn't want me to be in creative. He'd be like, go to law school or med school, go to med school. And I was like, I don't want to go to med school. So I think... And, comedy's cultural, and I'm doing a very specific, nuanced corner of comedy.
If somebody who you cared about asked you, just describe your comedy, what would you say?
I would say it's very loud and bombastic and hyperactive and... gonzo and absurdist and psychedelic.
But also...
Those are all the adjectives I got for you.
Right. But also you're talking about stuff. I mean, obviously, I keep going back to that movie because I literally just watched it and I'm not over-exaggerating. I have never laughed so hard and enjoyed it. I was so tickled to meet you after seeing that.
Thank you.
But there's a point of view. There's a world point of view of... caring about in my mind, you're almost saying without saying it, America's a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
And people of color are some compassionate.
Right.
They've seen it all, and had it all done to them, and look how compassionate they still are.
We showed the movie an early cut. We went to Sacha Baron Cohen's house, and we showed him an early cut of the movie because we needed help. The movie was in shambles in the beginning. But he goes, the win for your movie, he goes, my movies are trying to show off how shitty hypocritical politicians are and the people in power. He goes, your movie has The Victory is showing how people of color and working class people are good and good Samaritans and the humanity and the working class in America. Because I think the news doesn't cover, and social media doesn't cover people being nice and people being philanthropic and good Samaritans. The news and social media just covers the extremes in humanity and chaos and violence. And
if you had done a straight movie, meaning narrative, dialogue, all of that scripted, it would have felt like a bit of a lecture. It's a tough thing to put that out in the world.
Right.
If you did a pure news interview, 60-minute segment, not. But when you combined it with the danger of pranks, it really was impactfthat.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So what kind of I've heard you talk about anxiety.
Yeah.
Was that from,
it never ends.
As a kid?
Always.
When did you know, oh, wait, this is something I have?
I think always, but I didn't know it was how punishing it was until I started going to therapy.
At age, if I may ask. Is this okay? Talk about it?
Yeah, no, I'm an open book. 25, 26, I started doing therapy.
Because something stopped working or the toll was too great?
It was around when I couldn't book an audition to save my life, when I was like having fall down panic attacks on audition. And you know what? Auditioning is nerve-wracking. I need to like give 25-year-old me some credit.
Oh.
Like it's a nerve-wracking experience. You know how many auditions Steve Martin has been on?
How many?
One. He went on one once. Somebody saw him do stand-up and they were like, oh my God, you'd be great for this role. It was like in the 70s, early 70s.
Right.
You got to come in on audition. And he went in the room. We went in the waiting room and he saw like 8 guys that looked like him. And he botched the audition and he was like, there's no, what world am I going to be able to compete against 10 guys that look like me and give this performance in this nerve-wracking situation where I'm going to beat out the competition all the time. He goes, it just seems, he's like, I don't like this. I'm shittily paraphrasing. I remember reading his book and feeling like, okay, I'm not alone. Auditions are
especially if you're broke, especially if you need it.
Yeah, when you need it and you're broke and you're like, you just come to, and I was like, just got to LA fresh off the turnip truck. And I also just didn't know what the process was. I didn't understand it. It all seemed this intimidating, confusing thing to me. I needed to just demystify the process a little bit. But
were you doing stand-up at the time?
I was doing stand-up at the time.
Here in LA?
Yeah. I would do stand-up at the time in LA, and I would hit the road. But also, I just had the wrong, I was doing everything wrong. I didn't really know. I think like stand-up is its own craft and acting is its own craft, and I just needed to put in the work. But that's when I started going to therapy, because I was like, I can't function. I'm pursuing a career that I need to. My nerves are just through the roof.
That's a kind of bold move. A lot of people don't. They turn to other things that don't work, you know?
Yeah. I've definitely done a shot of vodka before an audition before. Not every audition I've ever done is I've been sober.
I understand the shot. I could never understand smoking dope before an audition.
Hell no.
No, that would be a
weed
nightmare.
has never hit me right. It doesn't. Weed is advertised like it's like soothing and calming. For me, the opposite. Every insecurity just bubbles to the forefront of my mind. It just puts me into a panic.
So who told you to go to therapy? Or did you see somebody you knew?
I think I just knew it was time. I don't think anybody needed to tell me. I think I was like, let me just give it a shot. And I'm also surrounded by comedians and writers all day. So like, I'm surrounded by people obsessed with therapy.
Who are deeply wounded and deeply funny.
Deeply wounded, deeply funny, and therapized. So it just seemed to make sense. And then when I started therapy, my first therapist told me about meditation, and I started doing meditation daily, TM, twice a day. And then right when I started therapy and doing TM, that's when I started booking auditions and feeling like, I had some like agency over my anxiety. But it's like it never ends, anxiety. You know, it's just part of my the neurochemicals I inherited from my parents. So I just
and anxiety is, I don't have what you have, but I have had paralyzing anxiety attacks.
During a performance?
I used to have them maybe once every year.
Yeah.
But performing, not live or something like that, but on a TV show or something.
Yeah.
And it would be just mind-numbing.
It's
couldn't
horrible.
Put sentences, words together.
You're completely out of body. It's so disassociated.
Yeah. And it felt like high school, and
that's horrible.
Here comes my line, and I have no idea. Should I cry?
Yeah.
Should I have no idea, just immobilizing.
Yeah. Sometimes I go, why did I pick this career choice in those moments? I'm like, why am I doing this? This is a nightmare. And you feel all alone. Everybody has stage fright.
Yeah.
Anybody that doesn't have stage fright, I think they're sociopathic. Like, there's no way you learn to cope with it, and it eventually becomes quieter as your career grows, your confidence grows, and But I remember I did a animated movie with Reese Witherspoon was in the cast, and to me, Reese Witherspoon is this all-star,
She is.
Veteran actor. She's done a million movies, television shows. And even her, she was like, backstage, she was saying something. She's like, I was telling her I went to a hypnotist. I was trying to stop eating sugar. She's like, I've been to a hypnotist once, but it was to work on my stage fright. I have like crippling stage fright. And I was like, what? Don't you have like a shelf full of Emmys and Oscars and like whatever, anything else? So we're all going through it, but you just feel alone. You feel alone when you're having bad anxiety. You feel alone. You feel like you're the only one on earth experiencing that, but everybody.
I had a scare on stage, 15 years ago. I don't know that I will ever. I shouldn't say never, but if somebody said you want to do a theater, it's like no,
never again.
No, I had so much fear and adrenaline pumping. We were doing these. The Atlantic Theater is this great theater that feeds into Broadway, and they're friends, and they asked me if I would like to come in and do this 1 week of, it's like a 20-minute, my piece was a 20-minute monologue. It was the 25th anniversary, and they had 25 writers, and they told them, write anything you want, opera, play, monologue, whatever. And then they would celebrate the theater's history by doing 5 of these, each week.
Yeah.
And so there's very little rehearsal.
Right.
And I watched somebody a few days before I was to do my week of this go up on a line because very little rehearsal. And I thought, well, somebody will whisper it from the wings. No, from the back of the house in the lighting booth over a microphone. We're liners, so I thought, fuck, I better think of something. At least be clever if you have to ask for a line. Yeah. And it was an 18-minute monologue.
Oh my God.
So stupid on my part. And it was brilliantly written, but I psyched myself out totally.
No.
I walked in the dark, to my place. The lights come up and probably 10 seconds in.
Oh no.
Total blank. And it's like sticking your finger in a light socket. It was like
a horrible feeling.
Am I going to cry? Fuck, I can't believe this. My daughter's in the audience. Shit.
No.
Do I stay? Do I apologize? Shit. All within a second, and then you ask for the line. And I said, Darcy, what happens next? Thinking how clever. And I got the line, but Darcy had just sat down in the lighting booth, with a cup of coffee and didn't have any fucking idea what my line was.
Oh no.
So it just got worse and worse. My daughter had to walk me around the block in New York like 4 or 5 times, drinking gallons of water. I had so much adrenaline. And then my sweet friend, I'll shorten this.
No.
Director said, hey, Ted, why don't we meet at the theater a half hour before the show? He was so sweet. And he got me there, and we just ran it over and over and over again. But literally every time I got to that line, my body freaked out and froze.
Yeah.
But he had me say it so much that night, when my body freaked out, my mouth kept flapping, and I got past it. But it was horrible. It was horrible.
Yeah, I do this thing I got from music school. I have to, I'll type my lines out so it's just my lines so that there's no stage directions or anything else from the script. It's a line memorization exercise where I'll type my lines. When I memorize them, if I can't say them out loud 5 times in a row without fucking up, I don't have them memorized. So even if I get to the 4th time, if I mess up, I go back. I start back at 1. I need to say it out loud 5 times in a row, and I say it like very monotone, just like da 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 da. So I don't get trapped into a line reading or like So I just say very monotone, and I have to do it 5 times in a row, and then I feel confident enough to go to set and know even if I have a fall down panic attack, I at least have the muscle memory where I can just like poop the line out of my mouth until my anxiety calms back down and get to the line and then come back to earth and then just be in the scene.
Do you think any part of you would, I know this is going to sound stupid, would miss your anxiety as a performer if you stood up and there was no anxiety?
Yeah, I think the anxiety helps. I think it can hurt if it's a full-blown panic attack, but it only helps because I have done stand-up shows where the room is lightly packed. I don't have any new jokes I'm excited about, and I don't feel any anxiety. I feel bored.
Then you're fucked.
And then you bomb. Yeah, then
fucked.
you're just like, man, yeah, you're phoning it in.
Yeah.
And that's when I bomb. You really, you have to have a little bit of pre-show jitters. It's just about like managing the full-blown panic attacks.
Can I do one more panic attack?
Yeah, I love these stories. This is very cathartic. I feel
I was 25 and I got my first kind of in front of a camera job. I got 2 jobs at the same day. One was for The Doctors, a soap opera, and one was for Somerset, a soap opera. And I booked. I didn't really have an agent or something, but the booking got fucked up. So people were angry at me that I had double said. I said yes to do different shows on the same day.
No.
So they were really angry. And then you have to come in tomorrow for The Doctors, and I had a full-blown panic attack.
Oh, no.
And I called our local psychologist, meaning all of us who got out of Carnegie, went to New York, and had the same. And I said, I'm not going. I've been nice all my life. I'm not going to be nice. This is not blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, slow down. Don't cut your nose off here.
Yeah.
Take a Valium. Relax. Go do it. Took a Valium. I didn't know Valium and me don't get along very well.
Oh, no.
So I woke up agitated and pouring sweat. And I went to go play this doctor who was reassuring this family that their daughter who has cancer will live. And the parents who had been on the show forever were supposed to be distraught, and I was supposed to be the calm influence. And I had sheets
of sweat you're on a Valium
pouring off of me, trying to reassure these people. I was so bad. I never got good on soap operas because they are the epitome of actor's nightmare. There's no room for humor.
Yep.
Or anything human. You know,
and you only have like 1 take, right?
Yes,
or 2 takes.
And you got your lines the night before.
Yeah. I knew somebody. Who's the guy on Little House on the Prairie, the famous actor? He's long dead. I want to say Jonathan Landis. That's not Landau.
No. Shit. What was his name?
Well, I'm totally spacing. Famous hunky.
He was in Bonanza.
Yeah.
Landon.
Jonathan Landon, right?
Michael
Landon.
Thank you. We'll go straight to Michael
Landon. Okay. Michael Landon. I was in acting class with his daughter, and she was like a soap star, and she had like all these daytime Emmys and stuff like that. And I was like, how do you do soaps? Don't you have like tons of dialogue, and they give it to you the night before, and you only have 1 take? And she's like, it's a fucking nightmare, but it's just like there's a gun to your head and you have no other choice to just nail your line. It's like such immense pressure. And they're the producers are very intense. And she's just like, it's just trial by fire. But she's like, I just got used to that pressure. I can imagine. It just seems so. And I get knives pulled out on me at work. And I'm like, man, the pressure of a soap star. And it's hard. I mean, they do a new show every day. It's crazy.
No, it's crazy.
Like an hour-long show, right? Every day. It's old school. I don't know if they exist anymore. Do they exist anymore? Soaps? General Hospital.
I think they do. I don't usually. I find myself in a car on a set, being driven to the set by a Teamster or whatever. Sometimes I don't put my safety belt on because I'm in Hollywood. Everything's fine. Everything's taken care of. I'm in my little bubble. Or if I walk around in a dangerous neighborhood, but we're shooting and I'm in a bubble. Everything's fine. You go into a situation and some guy for real chases you out with a knife. Are you thinking though, oh, it's okay though, I'm in my bubble? Or are you literally, oh, this could go really bad?
I'm thinking 2 things. I'm thinking, oh, this could go really bad in the moment, but I'm also fast forwarding ahead to the editing bay where I'm like, I'm so glad I got a great reaction. This is so high stakes. We have footage. We have usable footage. So I usually am more in a positive state of mind, ironically, when people are attacking me, because I'm like, well, that's something to watch. But it doesn't always mean, just because a Mark's reaction is violent doesn't always equate to comedy. Sometimes it's just dark.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, there are scenes in the movie. This one guy was gonna like break a bottle over my head, and we used a little bit at the bar. Yeah, we used a little bit of
just as he started to move around.
We used
the bar.
a little bit of him in the credit scroll, but he was really intense and gnarly, and it was in the body of the movie, and it never got a laugh at any of the test screenings, and we just cut it. Sometimes it's just too like ish. It's more ish than laugh out loud funny. Yeah. So it doesn't always equate, but at least you get people are reacting.
And you got to see the guy with the knife, I do believe, in the credit scroll where he saw him, realized what was going on. Or am I making that up?
I don't know if we showed his full reveal, the knife guy. We showed the guy that was going to break a bottle over me.
Right.
But or whatever he was going to do. He was going to punch me or something. But I do remember he took a shot. When he decided I need to punch this guy, he did do a shot of Jim Beam, and he got up and that's when I yelled popcorn.
This is going bad.
I
can't remember how you cut out of it, but it was clearly a good time to cut out.
It was a good time. Yeah, I think I was urinating next to him. It wasn't real urine, but
you can understand why someone might get pissed off at you.
He was a little bit upset.
Did you ever get anxiety during the filming of that? Because
every day.
Really? Because it seems like the real, I find usually my anxiety is, it's not really based on something real. It's
kind of both. I have like this generalized anxiety that's based on just fiction. And my overactive brain. And then I have like real fear, like, oh, I might get punched during this bit. And you only have, it's like a soap opera. You only have one take a lot of times. Like I think the hanging off the roof thing, we only had one take. The honky tonk, the cowboy bar, we only had one take. So you spend all this time and money and energy and writing.
But that's not anxiety. To my mind, that's fear, that's concern, that's real. You should be fearful of this, right?
That's true.
For me, anxiety usually is like,
it's your mind looking for trouble.
It's my mind looking for trouble. I don't get anxious if I cut myself badly. I don't get anxious.
Right.
I get fearful, but I can get anxious about the thought of.
Right. Yeah, that's a good distinction. I think that's a good distinction.
Can I keep on this part? Because I'm such a neurotic mess that I find this
surprised
part interesting.
By that. You seem like a cool summer breeze.
Right. I have psoriasis everywhere just because
From stress?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well,
you don't have psoriasis
not
everywhere.
anymore. Because they have these wonderful little biologics, they're called, where you can take a shot of something in it.
Is it like an eczema?
Yeah, but then it becomes something that gets into your bones and stuff. And so it's not
psoriasis.
Psoriatic arthritis becomes a problem.
You had it your whole life or recently?
Right after the 25-year-old who auditioned for the doctors.
That's when it started.
Took Valium.
So it was a stress reaction.
Yeah, I do believe. I think you have a propensity, and I think diet and a lot of stuff can contribute to it. But I do believe it's stress. Yeah.
You ever read those John Sarno books, Healing Back Pain?
Yes.
Divided by those books saved my life. I had back pain for years.
Until you recognize, it's
a stress reaction. Yeah.
Do you think
to the point where I was going to get back surgery, and I read those books. I did a movie.
I know so many people who cured themselves.
That guy's a saint. Those books saved my life. I recommend them to everybody.
Do you think you have fear on top of anger, or just
like internal rage? Yeah, I think it's your id resents the pressure you put on yourself as an adult. Your childlike id. It's a battle between your id and your superego. It's some Freudian shit. Yeah. It's just the pressure. And also a lot of the people in the book with a lot of the symptoms had like high pressure jobs. One was like, I watched like a 60-minute documentary about it first before I read the book. And it was like a television producer, a lawyer, people like that really put a tremendous amount of pressure.
Yeah.
Or people going through like big fundamental family changes, like their father just died and they had to take over the company.
Right.
Or there was one patient he talked about where they were in a failing, their marriage was failing, and they literally got a rash under their wedding ring in the shape of a wedding ring, which is pretty poetic.
Wow.
Yeah. So I totally believe that stress manifests in the body. Like, how could you not believe that? So.
Have you done, somebody told me that you had talked about it, so I feel okay asking about it.
Sure.
And I don't even know, MDMA?
I have done MDMA, yeah. I sure have.
Microdosing, I mean.
I've done macro dosing as well.
But that's self-treatment.
Yeah.
Have you done it under a guided?
Yes, I've done MDMA therapy.
Is that the same things that they try with vets who have post-traumatic stress?
Yeah, big time.
And can I ask, because I've never done it, but I'm really curious.
Well, now's the time. I put it in your water. That's the prank.
Fantastic. So far,
half an hour from
now.
now.
Want to pee, but
oh, it's gonna do more than that, brother.
Can I ask what that is like? So you take it, and do you become in a whatever state that drug makes you in, and then you talk?
Well, you do a bunch of talk
or?
sessions first without the medicine, without the psychedelic. It's a psychedelic amphetamine. So you do a bunch of talk sessions first. So you just talk about whatever issues are bothering you. But the doctor is really like kind of paving a pathway so that by the time you do the session with the MDMA, you kind of get right to it. So you do a bunch of talk sessions in his office. Then when you do the MDMA, he comes over to your house. You put on headphones. You put on a sleep mask.
Oh wow!
You get comfy. You get on your sofa with a blanket and in your pajamas. You take the MDMA, start playing music, and then you just kind of sit there. And I only kind of like peek through the sleep mask and chime in where I'm like, remind me to tell you about when that kid pushed me off of a bicycle when I was 7 or something. You know what I mean? Like something will pop up, but you're really kind of just going through and how I'll break it down. A doctor can break it down better than I can. But you store trauma in your amygdala. There's an almond-shaped gland in your brain called the amygdala where trauma is stored. And usually when you have trauma, that trauma gets triggered if you try to access it when you're sober. Let's say if you got bit by a snake when you were a kid, every time you saw something snake-like, you see a garden hose out of the side of your vision. That your amygdala gets triggered. So what the MDMA does, or they do psilocybin therapy, they're doing all these psychedelic therapies. Right. It allows you to access your trauma in a way that you can't access it while you're sober, and actually reroute your neural pathways around the trauma so that you can process the trauma and alleviate the triggering symptoms that happen from the PTSD response. Because
without the drug, you may be
it's too painful. Right. It's too painful to access without the drug.
Rewire,
especially if veterans with PTSD. There's nothing more. There's not a deeper trauma. So so it allows you to enter those old traumas in a way that you can't while you're sober.
Is it meant to be a one-off, or do you do this for weeks or months or however long?
I've only done it. I've probably had like 30 or 40 talk sessions with him, and I've only done the MDMA with him twice.
And how did it feel afterwards?
Incredible. Amazing.
And revelatory, like you went?
Revelatory, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Like shook up major things that needed to be rearranged. Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it now? I mean, now it's a full-on FDA goes yes, or somebody's going yes. Let's experiment with this.
It's on the precipice of being legalized. I mean, there are places like Oregon has decriminalized all drugs. It just needs to happen on like a federal level.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did that happen?
I saw a meme recently. It said, "I like the war on drugs because drugs won."
Where did your moral whatever guiding principle or spoken or unspoken come from? How do you know what's good and bad? How do you behave in life, and where did that come from?
I guess my parents. I guess my mom has been like a civil rights activist her entire life. She marched on Washington. When she was 18, she saw Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, and she's always been into like political activism for marginalized people. And my parents are both very kind. They're neurodivergent, but they're very sweet, almost to a fault. Though they're a little bit they're so people pleasy that they fall into codependency. But yeah, I guess from my parents.
My
Just
mother
common sense.
was, my parents, I got unconditional love, which right off the bat is one of the biggest gifts you can give to your kids.
Yeah.
But my mother was really good at dealing with the positive side to life, enthusiasm, creativity, encouragement, joy, happiness, willingness, all of those things. But anything petty or angry was to be suppressed. No, don't dwell on that. So that I grew up, I didn't have a choice to be nice. I had to be nice. And that is kind of bogus because you can only really be as nice as you can be shitty.
Right.
And once you start seeing, oh yeah, I actually am really shitty and I am really mean spirit, I can have all of these things, then I can choose to be nice in a situation.
Yeah.
And that took me a long time to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents didn't, my mom's alive, my dad passed away, but my parents were very like, they're not, they were very academic and egghead types, very like bookworms, but they lacked emotional intelligence. But they're very sweet. But I also was born and came into consciousness like at the back half of their marriage as they started drifting apart. So that was tough. They were married for almost 25 years. So my sister was born in 1974. I was born in 83. So she kind of got the ascension.
Right.
And I got the decline. And when they got divorced, she was 20 years old. She was already in college. And I was like 11 turning 12, which is this awkward.
That's tough.
Awkward coming of age. And they were not good at explaining that they were getting divorced either. I had to put it together. My dad was just like, I'm going to live somewhere else for a little bit. And I was like, what? What does that mean? And they never fought either. So it was very strange when they got divorced. I was like, he's going to live somewhere else. Okay. And then I had to be like, wait, you're not getting divorced, are you? And then later, a few months later, I was like, are you guys getting divorced? What the fuck is going on? And they were like, yeah. That was their speech. That's how they let me know they were getting divorced. I cried my eyes out. They had no capacity to be like, son, we love you very much.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with you.
This has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
We're both going to be there for you 110%. We still love each other, but our love for each other has changed.
Yeah.
I'm no longer going to live here, but I'm still going to be close and I'm going to be in your life. None of that. And my dad was a psychiatrist. He should know how to fucking what the ramifications of just going, I'm going to live somewhere else. And then me, at 12-year-old, having to put it together and ask them.
Yeah.
I had to drag it out of them to like, what's going on here?
And that's the time in life, especially then when you should have all, gentle focus coming your way to see, so you can develop into who you are as opposed to have to take care of your parents.
No, it was not great. But I resented them for that forever. But then I realized they just didn't have the capacity to communicate what they needed to communicate in that moment. They just are both on their own parts of the spectrum, and they just don't have. They don't possess the qualities to communicate.
It's such a good place to be when you finally realize, oh, my parents are just these really nice folks who are doing the best they can.
Yeah, they're human.
Yeah.
They're everyone's flawed. There's nobody's perfect. It's a relief when you realize that, but I did resent them for that for a long time. And I love them. I mean, it wasn't like I hated them at all. I love my dad to the end, and I love my mom very much. But my dad passed away last year. My mom's alive. My dad had cancer, pancreatic cancer.
Were you around them?
Towards the end, yeah, all the time. Towards the end, yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you are, man. When you cannot
horrible.
prepare yourself for losing a parent.
I know, it's unbelievably painful in a way. I was like, oh, God, I didn't know how much I loved my dad until he started dying.
Yeah.
But it was miserable. I mean, it's fucking miserable. It's really miserable. But you know what? All this stuff came out, and he died slow enough that we got to have talk and have closure and bring up stuff that he always avoided. My dad was very avoidant, very aloof, very avoidant, very avoided any kind of emotional vulnerability his whole life. And he's just from a different world. He's from the Caribbean. He's raised Catholic, and he's neurodivergent. So he's this bookworm from this repressive Catholic, old school, third world Caribbean culture. It's we're just from two different universes. I'm from the suburbs of Florida. So it's very hard to pull out emotion out of him and vulnerability. Yeah. So we just I was like, this is it. If I don't get, it's very awkward to bring some of this stuff up, but I just have to. I just have to. So.
And he was willing.
And he was willing. He was as responsive as I've ever seen him, because he kind of knew he had to get some of this stuff out. And he told me, he never told me he loved me my entire life. He never said, I always knew he loved me, but he never said, I love you, until a few days before he died. And he just eked it out. It was with his kind of his last breaths, and it came out of nowhere. He was sitting, and it was right before we started. We did hospice at the house. It was right before hospice started. And he was constantly watching TV, and I would just sit next to him in his bed. And then I just turned off the TV, and I looked at him. I was like, I don't want the TV on. Let's just talk. Even if it's awkward. And out of nowhere, he was just and he looked skeletal at this point. He was at the very, very end. And he had no energy. And he just, out of nowhere, he went, I love you. And I was like, what? The words I've been waiting to hear my whole life. I was like, what? What do you mean? Wait, what'd you say? It was what? I didn't say I love you back right away. I was like, what? And he goes, I love you. I never meant to upset you.
Oh, wow.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I started bawling, crying. Oh, my
God.
Bawling, crying. I have goosebumps telling this story. And then he looked at me like I'm bawling, crying. And he goes, can you ask for my nurse? So I go, okay. I go, Angela. I go, Angela, my dad needs you for a second. And he was very almost childlike in this stage. And his nurse came in, and he turned to his nurse. He goes, why is my son crying when I'm telling him I love him? I'm like, because I love you too, Dad. I love you too. I've been waiting my whole life for you to tell me that. And we just started bawling, crying.
Oh, my God.
Bawling, crying. And then the eerie part was, he looked at the foot of his bed, and he goes, my two friends are here. And I was like, what? And it was just me and his nurse. And I was like, what? And he goes, my two friends from my childhood are here. And I go, Dad, it's just me and Angela. It's just me and your nurse in your room. And he looked at me like, oh shit. It's the end. Kind of, And my friend is a death doula. She's an end of life care. She does hospice.
How brilliant.
She told me it's common that when people are dying, they'll see two people from their past, somewhere in the room or something like that. I'm like, really? She's like, that's a really common thing. I hear oh, I saw two men right before, or my dad or my mom said they saw two men before they died. So, and then the next day, I think I think it was the next day hospice started, and he's just kind of a zombie until the end. Yeah. And he would kind of be lucid every now and again, but not really. It's just
Did any of this change your anxiety and your performance stuff, or is
A little bit, because I think I was always seeking my father's approval because he was so aloof in my childhood. So I didn't realize how much that motivated me. So now that he's dead, I'm like, I felt, it's recent too. I felt like not a lack of motivation, but like trying to find motivation and inspiration from elsewhere. I didn't realize how much that was an engine.
He died.
After he died. Yeah, he died in December. He died recently. So it's been it hasn't even been a year. It's like pretty recent. Also, everyone's on strike this year. So it was like, it's just been a bizarre year, but it was actually like a forced sabbatical. I traveled a lot. I went to like Africa for the first time, and I traveled, I went to Peru and I did ayahuasca. I went to Ghana and Morocco and bopped all over Europe. So I took it as an opportunity to self-reflect and find new motivation. It is a big, bizarre spiritual shakeup. It also feels like when your dad dies, as a guy, I'm like, I'm an adult now. I felt like, I'm an adult. Right. I'm in charge. I still feel like a kid.
Yeah.
But now I'm not. Now I'm an adult. Now I'm in charge. Kinda. I'm not in charge of really anything. Besides, like, paying my bills. But it's a big existential shakeup. It's strange. Yeah, it's real. Yeah.
I don't know where we are time-wise, but
It's 3 a.m.
It feels...
I gave you MDMA.
I have so much respect for you as an artist.
Thanks.
And watching your film today really was a highlight.
Oh, thanks so much.
But
yes,
I really enjoyed talking about the emotional stuff.
Cool.
To me, that's what connects me to people and all of that. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Of
really
course.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Do we get to like hug when we see each other in the street?
Yeah, anytime. You can hug me, you can tackle me.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.